The palace has been silent for months. Whispers of Duchess Catherine's mysterious absence have spread like wildfire. But just 1 minute ago, everything changed. Prince William took the stage and with trembling emotion uttered the words no one expected. It wasn't just an announcement. It was a reckoning, a confession, and a warning. The truth was no longer hidden. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The silence that had hung like a heavy curtain over Buckingham Palace has finally been pierced. For over 3 months, the Duchess of Cambridge had not been seen in public, a disappearance that triggered a frenzy of speculation and unease across Britain and beyond. The public grew restless, their curiosity morphing into concern, and concern quickly fermenting into suspicion. What began as polite media inquiries escalated into a storm of headlines, demands for transparency, and viral theories. Still, the palace maintained its notorious tight-lipped stance, releasing vague statements citing private medical matters and routine rest, but offering nothing of substance. Even the most loyal royalists began to feel that something was terribly off. And then, just minutes ago, the world was jolted awake. At a hastily arranged press conference at Windsor, Prince William, stoic, regal, but visibly shaken, stood before the press. Cameras flashed, the room held its breath. For a man trained to master restraint, to guard his emotions like royal treasure, his voice cracked within seconds. The weight of what he was about to say was too heavy even for a future king. He didn't read from the teleprompter. He didn't wait for clearance. He simply spoke. "We never wanted this to come out this way," he said, his eyes betraying months of hidden anguish. The words hung in the air like a curse, ominous, unfinished, loaded. Journalists scrambled to decipher what it meant. Some phones cut out mid-transmission. Feeds froze. As if the very system around him was trying to suppress the truth one final time. But the genie was out of the bottle. William had confirmed what many feared, and yet few truly expected. Catherine is pregnant with their 4th child, and the path to this revelation had been anything but joyous. It was drenched in secrecy, shadowed by medical crises, and weaponized in royal conflict. In a monarchy where appearances are everything, William's raw and unrehearsed speech was an act of rebellion. His tone wasn't celebratory. It was mournful, defiant, as though he wasn't just announcing a pregnancy, he was sounding the alarm. And as the room erupted into chaos, one couldn't help but sense that this was just the beginning. Social media went into overdrive. News anchors stammered. Live translations failed to keep up. The world watched a royal man, stripped of pomp, standing alone in truth. But what forced William to finally speak, and why now? The answer lies buried in a chain of betrayals, secrets, and a power struggle that began long before anyone noticed Catherine was gone. She was the most photographed woman in the world, and then she vanished. For over 100 days, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was nowhere to be seen. No balcony waves, no charity visits, not even a photo leak. But behind the silence, insiders were already panicking. What began as mild curiosity soon escalated into full-blown panic. It started with a missed appearance at a children's hospital. A visit Catherine herself had organized. At first, the palace issued a vague statement. The princess is taking time to recover from a minor medical procedure. But no details followed. No new engagements were scheduled. No updates were given. Then came the cancellations, quiet at first, then relentless. Weeks passed, and Catherine's name was scrubbed from royal calendars. The press office grew colder, tighter. Those who dared ask questions were met with a practiced response: "We ask for privacy at this time." But privacy only breeds speculation. Soon, wild theories filled the void. Was she ill? Had there been a surgery gone wrong? Was she refusing to return to the public eye? Or had she left the family altogether? Royal commentators speculated everything from marital estrangement to a psychological breakdown. Some tabloids even floated darker theories, none of which the palace confirmed or denied. But something deeper was brewing beneath the surface. A single grainy video began circulating online, grainy, low-light footage of what looked like a blacked-out vehicle pulling into a side entrance of a private medical facility just outside of London. The timestamp? 2:30 in the morning. The car, believed to be one of the royal fleet, No sirens, no fanfare, just a single, carefully orchestrated moment of movement in an otherwise frozen world. From that point forward, the palace grew even more defensive. Multiple aides reportedly resigned within a span of just 2 weeks. But insiders whispered the truth: they were either removed or reassigned to remote departments after expressing concern about how Catherine's absence was being managed. Behind the royal facade, power was shifting, control was tightening, and somewhere within those walls, Catherine was either being protected or concealed. Meanwhile, William was forced to face the world alone, and it showed. At state events, he smiled, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. He fumbled through speeches. At one point, during a royal visit to a veterans centre, he paused mid-sentence, visibly distracted, and abruptly left the podium. His team rushed to cover the moment, but the damage was done. The future king was unravelling, and the people noticed. It was clear whatever was happening behind the scenes was far more serious than anyone was being told. Yet even as the media speculated and the public grew restless, behind gilded palace walls, a quiet war was being waged, a war over the fate of a mother and an unborn heir. Queen Camila wasn't celebrating. Behind closed doors, she issued a ruthless ultimatum: Catherine's pregnancy must remain hidden, or the monarchy would fracture. Why would the queen consort fear another royal baby? Unless the baby changed everything. What the public never saw was the escalating Cold War behind palace walls. Catherine and Camilla had long maintained a delicate dance, smiles in public, icy stares in private, but something shifted in the months leading up to Catherine's disappearance. Insiders describe a confrontation at Windsor, where raised voices echoed down corridors, usually cloaked in silence. Camilla had summoned Catherine under the guise of discussing future engagements. But it wasn't about charity work or ribbon cuttings, it was about control. Control of a narrative, control of a succession, control of a legacy, and most of all, control over a pregnancy that hadn't yet been announced but was already setting fire to ancient power structures. One senior aide reportedly overheard Camilla saying, "This family cannot afford another Diana." A chilling comparison, one that hinted at deeper fears not of Catherine's failure, but of her soaring popularity. Camilla, who had spent decades clawing her way into the public's favour, now saw herself once again cast into the shadows. The public's love for Catherine had grown to mythic proportions. Every gesture, every outfit, every moment was devoured by the media and revered by a new generation. And with a fourth child on the way, Catherine wasn't just the future queen consort, she was becoming the monarchy's most powerful symbol of continuity, compassion, and strength. Camilla, according to insiders, was furious. She allegedly demanded that William and Catherine delay any public announcement until after Charles's next strategic address. The message was clear: Catherine's womb could wait. The monarchy's image came first. But for William and Catherine, it wasn't about optics, it was about survival. The pregnancy was already complicated. Stress, secrecy, and political games weren't luxuries they could afford. And yet, every path forward was blocked by Camilla's influence. She had Charles's ear, the loyalty of senior courtiers, and the cunning to twist tradition into weaponry. This wasn't the first time royal births were manipulated for political ends. History is stained with tales of hidden pregnancies, forged timelines, and silenced midwives. The crown, after all, is obsessed with lineage, but only when it can control the narrative. Camilla's fear wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Sources suggest she believed this child could accelerate reforms William had quietly championed, modernizing succession laws, redefining roles, and potentially diminishing the grip of the older generation. In other words, this baby, unborn, unseen, and already at risk, posed an existential threat to the throne as Camilla envisioned it. Behind her perfectly measured statements, the queen consort was fighting to secure her chapter of the monarchy's story. But Catherine was no longer playing by the same rules, and William. He was already preparing to defy them. But Camilla's threats would not be the only challenge, because Catherine herself was facing a devastating medical crisis, one that could have ended everything. Behind the grandeur of royal portraits was a woman battling for her life and her child's. Catherine's pregnancy wasn't ordinary. It was dangerous, and the risks were growing by the hour. But the palace made a chilling choice. Protect the monarchy's image, not the mother. For months, Catherine had been suffering in silence, hidden away behind the ornate walls of a system designed to project perfection, not truth. While the world speculated about her absence, the real story was far more devastating. Catherine had been diagnosed with a rare and life-threatening complication early into her pregnancy, one that placed both her life and the baby's in grave danger. Hyperemesis gravidarum had returned, but this time, it wasn't just severe. It was relentless. The vomiting, the dehydration, the unmanageable pain, it was worse than anything she had endured in her previous pregnancies. But unlike before, the palace wasn't allowing her to rest publicly. They needed silence, discretion, a vanishing act. And Catherine became collateral. She was rushed to a private facility late one night under a pseudonym. Her transport heavily guarded, windows blacked out. No medical records linked her to the hospital. Even some senior staff didn't know who they were treating. But one nurse made a mistake, a panicked whisper caught on a private recording. "She's not responding, get William now." That single phrase was leaked to the press, sending shockwaves through royal watchers. The palace moved quickly to deny and deflect, but the damage was done. A secret had been exposed, and behind that secret stood a prince spiraling into panic. William had been attending a diplomatic reception when the call came through. He froze mid-sentence, eyes fixed on his aide, before abruptly leaving without explanation. Guests whispered. Journalists raised eyebrows. Something was unraveling, and William didn't care who noticed. He raced through back corridors and boarded an unmarked vehicle, headed straight for the facility where his wife lay unconscious. For hours, there was no update. Not to the public, not even to his father. And still, the palace refused to release a statement. The official narrative remained unchanged. The princess is recovering privately. Doctors advised absolute rest and zero stress. But in the chaos of royal politics, peace was impossible. Decisions were being made above Catherine's head about her image, about the pregnancy, about when or whether the truth would be allowed out. And as the days blurred into weeks, another silent casualty began to suffer. Prince George, growing more anxious with each unanswered question, finally turned to his father and asked, "Is Mummy ever coming home?" A question so simple, so innocent, and yet it shattered William's composure. He had already watched his mother suffer at the hands of the crown. He would not allow history to repeat itself. And as Catherine fought in silence, William made a fateful decision to challenge royal protocol and risk everything to protect his wife. He was the heir, the golden boy, but even a future king has limits. William broke every royal rule, every tradition, to take control of Catherine's protection. And in doing so, he crossed powerful enemies, including his own blood. The breaking point came not with Catherine's diagnosis, but with the institution's cold indifference toward it. William watched helplessly as the palace clung to silence, prioritizing image over life, optics over honesty. Decisions were made without him, carefully worded statements ghost-written by courtiers who hadn't so much as looked his wife in the eye. For weeks, he tried to cooperate, to negotiate, to reason. But the longer he waited, the more he realized Catherine was being treated like a liability, not a life. And that realization ignited something within him that not even the crown could control. One night, with little warning, William moved her. In secret, without clearance, without escort, Catherine was pulled from the facility under the cover of darkness and taken far from London, to a secure countryside estate known only to a handful of trusted staff. Not even the king was informed, not Camila, not the press office, not even royal security. In doing so, William violated centuries of protocol. But he didn't care. He wasn't acting as the future monarch. He was acting as a husband who had seen the woman he loved reduced to a political inconvenience. When Charles finally found out, it wasn't through a briefing, it was through a leak. An aide, terrified of the consequences, disclosed the operation in a closed-door meeting at Clarence House. What followed, according to multiple insiders, was nothing short of an explosion. The king, furious at the insubordination, reportedly confronted his son directly in what sources described as a thunderous shouting match. But William stood his ground. He refused to apologize, refused to explain. He simply said, "You weren't going to protect her, so I did." From that moment forward, William went dark. He pulled out of scheduled engagements, missed meetings, and shut off all official channels. Even his security detail was trimmed to the bare minimum. He became a ghost in his own palace. The man once groomed to be the stable, obedient heir had become something else entirely, a rogue royal with nothing left to lose. For the establishment, it was chaos. For William, it was freedom. To those close to him, his emotional unraveling was painfully visible. In one telling moment, an aide asked whether Catherine would be returning to London for treatment. William looked him in the eye and replied, "She's my wife before she's your princess." 7 words that cut through the centuries of formality and reminded everyone that behind the headlines, behind the titles, was a man fighting for the woman who gave everything to the monarchy and got nothing but silence in return. But as tensions reached a boiling point, another twist emerged, one that would expose the monarchy's darkest paranoia. A fear of Catherine's child reshaping royal destiny. What if a child could end centuries of tradition? Inside palace corridors, whispers spoke of destiny of a baby who could fracture the line of succession and perhaps even change the monarchy forever. This wasn't just a pregnancy. It was a prophecy. Rumors had already begun swirling that the child Catherine carried was a girl. But this wasn't just about gender. This was about legacy, about symbolism, about history repeating itself in a form the monarchy wasn't ready for. Whispers began to spread of the Diana child, a poetic rebirth, a spiritual heir not just to Catherine, but to the woman whose shadow still lingered over every corridor of the crown. A daughter would mean more than a 4th child. It would mean the continuation of a legacy built on grace, rebellion, and human connection, everything the modern monarchy had spent decades trying to manage, contain, and dilute. And for some within the firm, that was a terrifying prospect. Behind the scenes, William had begun pushing quietly for a radical reform, an unspoken plan to apply equal primogeniture to his children. In short, if the child were a girl, she would not be skipped over in favor of George or Louis. She would stand equal, inherit equal, matter equally. That notion alone shook the foundations of everything Charles had inherited. The monarchy wasn't built for equality, it was built on hierarchy. William's vision didn't just challenge the old model, it threatened to rewrite it entirely. And Camila, alongside the old guard of royal traditionalists, sensed the risk. They feared the modernization not because it was wrong, but because it stripped away their power to gatekeep tradition. Then came the leaked letters, private notes between Catherine and a longtime confidant, revealing a deeply personal desire to raise this child without titles, without burden, without the weight of expectation. The sentiment was innocent, even maternal. But in the context of a monarchy obsessed with titles, it was revolutionary. Catherine wasn't planning a royal birth. She was envisioning a liberated one, a child raised with freedom instead of formality. That alone was enough to unsettle the court, because if one royal could opt out, what message did that send to the institution's very soul? Outside the gates, the people were watching closely, and slowly they began choosing sides. Polls quietly reflected a seismic shift. The public was turning, leaning not toward Charles and Camilla, but toward William and Catherine, their humanity, their vulnerability, their undeniable authenticity. They weren't just heirs, they were survivors, and the child they were protecting had come to symbolize something much greater, the hope that the monarchy could finally evolve. But inside the palace, this symbolism sparked paranoia. To the firm, this child represented a break in the chain, a future queen born of compassion, not compliance, a monarch shaped by love, not lineage. And in that prophecy lay their deepest fear, that this child might not just be royal by birth, but transformative by destiny. As pressure mounted and secrets threatened to erupt, William had only one choice: to go public, with tears in his eyes, and shatter the silence with truth. He stepped up to the microphone, face pale, eyes weary. The room was packed, but you could hear a pin drop. What William said next wasn't just confirmation, it was a call to arms, a message to the world and a direct challenge to the monarchy's inner circle. It wasn't meant to happen this way. The press conference had been scheduled under the guise of a routine address, no headlines, no drama, no deviation. The palace had ensured every detail was controlled, every camera placed, every journalist vetted. But none of that mattered, because William was done playing by their rules. He arrived 10 minutes early, accompanied by only one aide. No smiles, no waving, no royal performance. Just a man on the brink of breaking the chains that had bound his family in silence. As he approached the podium, you could feel the air shift. For a few seconds, he stared down at the prepared speech. And then, without warning, he folded it, slid it aside, and looked up, not at the crowd, but into the lens. As if speaking directly to the millions watching from behind their screens. His voice cracked at first. Then it steadied, sharpened, and in that trembling defiance, he said the words that shattered the palace facade. Yes. Catherine is pregnant. This child is our hope. She is our courage. She is our truth. The room erupted, but William didn't stop. He continued, painting a picture the world hadn't seen, not of palaces and crowns, but of hospitals and fear, of Catherine, frail and fighting, her body weakened but her spirit unbroken. He spoke not as a royal but as a husband devastated by silence. We waited, we obeyed, we trusted, he said. But sometimes silence becomes betrayal, a line that wasn't aimed at the press, it was aimed at the firm, and everyone knew it. There were no names, no direct accusations. But between the lines, William exposed the rot, how power had been placed above protection, how image had been chosen over integrity. He spoke of the weight his children carried, of George's quiet questions and Charlotte's sleepless nights. He held back tears, but not truth. For the first time in his life, William didn't speak for the monarchy. He spoke against it. Within minutes, the world caught fire. The hashtag She Is Our Truth flooded every corner of the internet. Clips of the speech went viral, the bar. News anchors choked up. Support poured in from every continent. For once, the royal narrative wasn't controlled by courtiers, it was carried by the people. William hadn't just confirmed a pregnancy, he had launched a movement. One that echoed far beyond family, far beyond tradition. One that said, this monarchy must change or it will crumble. But William's truth-telling had consequences. And within minutes of his speech, another royal player stepped into the arena armed with secrets of her own. As the world wept with William, Queen Camila remained stone-faced. But hours later, her carefully worded statement dropped, and it sent shivers down every spine in the kingdom. Behind the flowery phrasing was a message of pure steel. The war inside the monarchy had only just begun. The timing was deliberate. The silence following William's speech had stretched into a tense and emotional vacuum. People waited, some with hope, others with dread, for a united response from the palace. What they got instead was a statement so cold, so polished, it could have been crafted by a diplomat, not a grandmother-to-be. Camilla's words were clinical, buried in layers of propriety and tradition. She expressed gratitude for continued public interest in the well-being of the royal family and emphasized the enduring importance of duty above all else. But one thing was missing: any mention of Catherine. Not her name, not her condition, not the child growing within her. Nothing. And in that omission, the public heard everything. To many, it was a clear signal that Camila was drawing a line in the sand. Her choice of phrases, duty over emotion, preserving continuity, the stability of the crown, weren't just symbolic. They were a direct rebuke to William's raw and vulnerable speech, which had placed humanity above hierarchy. Behind palace walls, insiders were already whispering that Camila had been deeply disappointed in William's display. A leaked internal memo revealed she had referred to it as an unnecessary fracture in the public image of the monarchy. Some courtiers reportedly nodded in agreement, others stayed silent, but the effect was undeniable. The royal family was no longer operating as a unit, it was splintering, and each fracture was visible. King Charles found himself in the most impossible position, torn between the loyalty of a wife who had stood beside him through scandal and the love of a son now threatening to unravel everything he had built. Reports surfaced of a quiet confrontation between father and son days after the speech. It wasn't loud like the last time, it was weary, hollow, and full of subtext. Charles, ever the image keeper, asked William if he truly understood the consequences of what he had done. William's answer? Yes. Do you? As the cracks widened, the media took sides. British tabloids, once slavishly loyal to the institution, began to polarize. Team William headlines praised his bravery, calling him the modern leader the monarchy needed. Others, aligned with the firm, accused him of jeopardizing the crown's stability and showing emotional recklessness. Social media mirrored the divide. Millions rallied behind William and Catherine's story, their pain, their courage. But an older, more traditional base clung tightly to the narrative of decorum, hierarchy, and silence. And while the public debated and the institution bristled, one presence remained unseen, utterly silent. No photo, no statement, no gesture. Catherine. She was recovering, far from the public gaze, but something was shifting. Her absence was no longer a void, it was a build-up, a quiet force gathering weight. And what no one expected, not even William, was that her return would come with more than recovery. It would come with reckoning. Yet amid the chaos, one woman remained silent, recovering, healing, and preparing for a moment no one would expect. Not even William. She had vanished, she had nearly died. But now, she was walking into the spotlight not as a victim, but as a mother, a warrior, and a woman who had seen the palace from behind the veil. And Catherine's return wasn't a mere appearance, it was a reckoning. The air outside the palace was electric. Crowds had gathered with no confirmation, no itinerary, only whispers that something was coming. And then, without royal fanfare or choreographed procession, Catherine emerged. Her frame was visibly changed by the months of struggle, but she stood tall. Her hand rested gently on her growing belly, not as a royal gesture, but as a quiet symbol of survival. The woman they had buried in speculation was back, and she was done being silenced. She walked to the podium, flanked by no entourage, no handlers, just William standing beside her. The crowd hushed. Catherine took a breath, then began to speak. Her voice was steady, unshaken, but beneath the calm was a storm of truth. She didn't recite royal platitudes. She didn't speak for the firm. She spoke for herself and for every mother, every woman, every person who'd been made to choose between duty and life. There comes a time, she said, when truth is not a threat to tradition, but its salvation, and when choice becomes the greatest gift we can give our children. Her words were calculated but deeply personal. She acknowledged the silence, the fear, the near loss that had followed her into seclusion. She spoke of the child growing within her not as an heir or symbol, but as a promise that the future would be one of transparency, compassion, and change. The subtle fire in her tone wasn't bitterness, it was defiance wrapped in dignity, and it scorched every expectation the monarchy had tried to cage her with. As her speech spread across media channels, the response was seismic. Hashtags exploded. Support poured in from every corner of the globe. For the first time in modern history, a royal woman had seized her own narrative without apology, without permission. Polls shifted within hours. Approval ratings for Catherine soared beyond anything the palace had forecast. And inside those same walls, the tremors began. Senior aides, long considered loyal to Queen Camilla's inner circle, began to break ranks. Whispers of resignation, quiet messages of solidarity to William's team. The monarchy's infrastructure, once impenetrable, had been cracked from the inside, but it was the final image that redefined history. As Catherine concluded her address, William stepped forward. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. He simply took her hand in his, and they stood together, united, unscripted, unbreakable. They weren't just heirs to a crown, they were rebels with cause, and their defiance had shifted the nation's soul. The monarchy had been shaken, loyalties had shifted, and as the world watched, one thing became clear: this fourth child was not just a baby, she was the beginning of a new royal chapter 1, written in truth, tears, and thunder. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.